Welcome back, and thank you for joining me for some powers and exponents. Here I have an example of a power. If you can write this down in your notes, it is read 2 to the 5th power. This power is a shorthand way of writing a multiplication problem. It has 2 parts, a base and an exponent. Do you know which is which? I bet you do. The exponent is this little guy right here, the 5. And then that would mean that the base is the big number 2. You've got it, big base. So this power 2 to the 5th power, it tells us to multiply something. It's a shorthand way of writing a multiplication problem. But what multiplication problem? Do you know? Does it mean 2 times 5? No, it doesn't. It means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. That's right, I'm going to write it out. This is exactly what it means. It tells us to take the big base and multiply it by itself this many times. And then, of course, I could use a calculator and I could evaluate that. Evaluate means to find the value to get the answer. So I'm going to take 2 and raise it up to the 5th power in my calculator, and it's going to multiply all those 2's together for me to get 32. So the value would be 32. Let's take a look at a couple special powers. What if I had something that's to the 2nd power? Well, for example, we might have 4 to the 2nd power. Well, we know that that just means 4 times 4, which is equivalent or has a value of 16. Now, is there another way to say to the 2nd power? Is there another word that I could use instead of 2nd power? You know it, squared. Yes, I can use the word squared. 4 squared. And that means the same as to the 2nd power. Let's take a look at another special case. What about to the 3rd power? Perhaps I have the power 4 to the 3rd power. Well, we know that that means 4 times 4 times 4, which is equivalent or has a value of 64. But is there another way to say to the 3rd power? Absolutely. Cubed. You've got it. So I could say 4 cubed is equal to 64. Now, how can you keep these two separate? How can you remember that squared is 2 and cubed is 3? Do you have a way to do that? Well, you see my pictures here? A square is flat. It's 2-dimensional. A square has a length and a width, 2 dimensions. So when I see the number 2, I can think, oh, that's square because a square has 2 dimensions. Then when I think a cube is a 3-dimensional figure because it can move around, right? I can see all dimensions. I can see length, I can see width, and I can see the height. So 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. So 3, 3rd power, cubed, because a cube has 3 dimensions. A square is 2-dimensional. A cube is 3-dimensional. So you can use those tips to kind of help you know the difference between those words, squared and cubed. For our investigation, I would really like you to pause the video and use a calculator to evaluate each one of these powers. Then you can unpause the video and check your answers. All right, hopefully you got the same answers as I did. What I want to do here is a little investigation to see what 2 to the 0 power is. Maybe you think you have an idea. Did you try typing it into your calculator? Were you surprised by what it said? Well, 2 to the 0 power, if you type it into a calculator, it says 1. Well, think about this as a pattern. This I have 2 to the 4th power, and that's 16. Because that's really 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Now here, when I do 2 to the 3rd power, do you see how I have 1 less 2? It's kind of like dividing by 2. And if I continue that with 1 less 2 and divide by 2 and divide by 2 again, When I take 2 and divide it by 2, I get 1. So it does make sense in this pattern that 1 would be the answer. Same thing over here. 3 to the 4th power looks like this, right? And if I do 3 to the 3rd power, that's 1 less 3. So it's really like dividing by 3. If I divide 81 by 3, I get 27. If I divide by 3 again, I would get 9. If I take 9 and divide it by 3, I get 3. And if I take 3 and divide it by 3 again, I would get 1. And if you type this into your calculator, 3 to the 0 power, you get 1. I encourage you to try any number. Take your favorite number, minus 14. Raise it to the 0 power in your calculator, and you'll see that the answer is 1. Any number to the 0 power is always 1. So in our notes, any number to the 0 power is always equal to 1. Well, let's write that down. Now, take your calculator. Try practicing evaluating these. By practicing it and seeing it in your calculator, you'll remember this. Try it. If I take 6 and raise it up to the 0 power, I get 1. 10 to the 0 power is also 1, and 19 to the 0 power is also 1. Again, try it on a calculator. Now, I'd like you to try 0 to the 0 power. Try typing this into the calculator and see what happens. Interestingly enough, if I try typing in 0 and raise it up to the 0 power, it tells me it's an error. This is undefined. It cannot be defined. There's no answer for 0 to the 0 power. So here I can just write undefined. I wonder why. Have you ever thought about it? Maybe you could try Googling it and figure it out. In 8th grade, we do talk about why it is. If you're interested, let me know and I can tell you. All right, let's take a look at some examples. So we're going to take a look at our problem here. It says 6 cubed. We're going to change it to what it means in exponent form, and then we're going to find the value or evaluate. Let's give this first one a try. 6 cubed. Now remember the word cubed. It's another way of saying what power. Well, recall a cube has 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. So it means 3. So 6 cubed means 6 to the 3rd power, which tells us 6 times 6 times 6. Now use your calculator to figure out the value. So I can type, instead of typing in 6 times 6 times 6, I can type in 6 and raise it to the 3rd power. It's a quicker way of doing it. 216 is the value. So here I have the exponent form, and here I have the value. Exponent form just means that it's written with an exponent. Our next example, 2 to the 5th power. 2 to the 5th power. This is how you write it in exponent form, using an exponent. Now to find the value, I have to understand here that 2 to the 5th power means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Now of course I don't have to type all of that into the calculator because the power is a shorthand way of writing that. So then I can just type in 2 and raise it to the 5th power, and it tells me the value is 32. Oops, I'm not going to write it here. I'm going to write it down here. Value is 32. All right, next one on number 3. 4 squared. Okay, squared. Think a square is 2-dimensional. It's flat. It just has length and width. Okay, so that's the same thing as saying 2. So exponent form, 4 squared, 4 to the 2nd power. Remember that that means 4 times 4, and the value is 16. So here's my exponent form, and here's my value. And the last one, number 4. 2.2, and we want to raise it to the 0 power. Now sometimes you might see it written like this. You could see it written with parentheses holding the 2.2 together. Regardless, the 2.2 is being raised up to the 0 power. And we know that any number to the 0 power is always 1. I could also type it in my calculator just to be sure in case this is new for me. 1. Very good. Thank you for joining me here for this lesson. Have a great day.